People think being a tribal officer is quiet work. They imagine traffic stops on empty roads, checking permits, maybe breaking up the occasional argument outside a gas station. They don't imagine the calls that come in after midnight. They don't imagine the places we're sent where GPS stops working. Or the things we're told not to put in reports. I've been a tribal officer for over 8 years. I won't say which reservation, and I won't say my real name, not because I'm afraid, but because some stories don't belong to one place. They belong to the land. Tonight, I'm going to tell you about the calls that still follow me home. The ones that made seasoned officers quit without notice. The ones we handled quietly, without backup, without media, and without explanations. The call came in just after 1:40 a.m. A woman reported movement inside a newly built house at the edge of tribal land. No power. No water. No residents yet. Just sounds. I arrived alone. No lights on for miles. The house stood there unfinished, windows dark, wind pressing against the siding like slow breathing. I announced myself. No answer. The front door was unlocked. Inside, the air smelled new, paint, wood, insulation. But something was off. The dust on the floor wasn't untouched. Bare footprints crossed the living room. They didn't lead to any door. They led into a corner wall. That's when I heard it. Footsteps upstairs. Slow. Careful. Like whoever was walking didn't want to be heard, but wanted me to know they were there. I cleared the stairs. Second floor was empty. No footprints. No attic access. No crawl space. But the footsteps continued. Above me. Inside the ceiling. I left without finishing the search. The house was boarded up the next morning. It burned down 3 weeks later. No cause found. At 2:17 a.m., dispatch sent me to check on a man standing in the middle of a dirt road. No car. No flashlight. No phone. Just standing. When I pulled up, he didn't turn around. I called out. Nothing. As I stepped closer, I noticed something wrong with his posture. His shoulders were too stiff. His head tilted forward at an unnatural angle. I asked for ID. That's when he spoke, without turning. You shouldn't be here tonight. His voice sounded delayed. Like it didn't match the movement of his mouth. I told him to turn around. He didn't. Instead, he said. They already followed you. I stepped back. The radio crackled, not with static, but breathing. When I turned my headlights back on him, the road was empty. No footprints. But my patrol truck door was open. I never take that road anymore. The old tribal school had been abandoned for years. Condemned. No electricity. Security alarms triggered 3 nights in a row. On the 4th night, I went in alone. Hallways smelled like dust and mold. Old drawings still taped to the walls. At the end of the hallway, I heard children laughing. Soft. Distant. Then the lockers began opening. One by one. Not slamming. Not violently. Just opening. As if someone was calmly checking each one. I cleared the building. Nothing. But when I returned to my vehicle, my dash cam footage was corrupted. All except one frame. It showed me standing in the hallway. And someone standing behind me. A woman flagged me down near the forest boundary. She said she was lost. She knew my name. She knew my badge number. She knew where I lived. When I offered to help, she smiled and said. They told me you'd come alone. I called for backup. Radio dead. When I looked back, she was gone. But her footprints didn't walk away. They circled my truck. Over. And over. And over. I didn't sleep after that first night. I sat at my kitchen table until sunrise, uniform jacket still on, boots muddy by the door. I kept replaying the footage in my head, the way the figure moved, the way it didn't react to the lights, the way it vanished without sound. By morning, I convinced myself I was overthinking it. Until my radio crackled. Unit 12, copy. I answered immediately. Unit 12, go ahead. Static. Then dispatch again, quieter this time. Did you respond to a call last night near mile marker 47? My stomach tightened. No, I said. Only routine patrol. Why? There was a pause, long enough to feel wrong. That address logged a welfare check request at 2:13 a.m. Caller reported, movement around an abandoned homestead. That was impossible. No call ever came through. And mile marker 47 was exactly where I'd seen it. I told dispatch I'd swing by later in the day. I didn't tell them everything. Some things you keep to yourself until you're sure. The place looked worse in daylight. The trailer sat crooked in the sand, windows broken, door hanging loose. No tracks leading in. No tracks leading out. Just wind-smoothed dirt and dead weeds. Inside, it smelled old. Not rotten, just unused. Dust layered everything evenly, like no one had disturbed it in years. Except one thing. In the back bedroom, the floor was scuffed in wide circles. Pacing marks. Slow. Repetitive. Like someone had been walking the same path for a long time. There were no footprints. No hair. No blood. Just movement marks where something heavy had pressed into the dirt over and over again. On the wall, scratched deep enough to cut into the wood, were symbols. Not letters. Not drawings. Marks I recognized but wished I didn't. Old warnings. The kind elders tell children not to repeat. I backed out of that room without turning around. The second night. The next call came just after midnight. Single vehicle stopped on the shoulder near Red Mesa Road. Driver claimed something followed him. I arrived to find a man shaking so badly he could barely speak. He kept pointing toward the desert. It stayed just far enough back, he said. Every time I slowed down, it slowed. Every time I sped up, it did too. I asked him what he saw. He swallowed. Nothing, he said. That's the problem. I walked the road with my flashlight. That's when I noticed the ground. Footprints. But not like a person walking. They were too deep. Too wide. And spaced wrong, long strides, but uneven, like the legs didn't bend right. They circled the man's truck. Then stopped. Right at my boots. The driver refused to leave until sunrise. I stayed with him. Neither of us spoke. I broke protocol the next day. Drove out to see an elder I trusted. I didn't tell him everything, just enough. He listened quietly, then nodded once. You've seen something old, he said. Something that watches. I asked him what it wanted. He shook his head. Not want, he corrected. Wait. He told me stories I hadn't heard since childhood. About things that mimic absence. About spirits that don't chase, because they don't need to. They move when you notice them, he said. And they stop when you don't. I asked how to stop it. He looked at me for a long time. You don't, he said. You just don't let it notice you noticing. That night, I checked every lock twice. 3 nights later, the motion camera at the abandoned homestead triggered again. This time, I watched the live feed. The camera shook slightly. Then stabilized. Then. The horizon bent. That's the only way I can describe it. Like something tall passed in front of the lens without ever entering frame. The image warped. The sound dropped out. And for exactly 1 second, the camera showed something reflected in its own lens. A shape behind it. Standing close. Too close. I shut the feed off. The camera never turned back on. At 3:07 a.m., my radio activated by itself. No dispatch tone. No unit ID. Just breathing. Slow. Heavy. Then a voice, calm, almost familiar. "You keep coming back." I didn't answer. "You don't have to," it said. The radio clicked off. When I checked the log later, there was no record of the transmission. No frequency. No timestamp. Nothing. 2 weeks ago, a new officer transferred into my district. He asked me about mile marker 47. Said he saw movement out there. Said dispatch never logged his call. I told him what I should have told myself. "Don't stop out there," I said. "And don't look for patterns." He laughed it off. Last night, his unit went dark. They found his cruiser at sunrise. Door open. Engine cold. No footprints around it. Just pacing marks in the dirt. Wide circles. Slow. Patient. And this time. They were still fresh. By the time I reached mile marker 42, the sky had turned a dull, colorless gray. Not storm gray. Not snow gray. Just, empty. The kind of sky that feels like it's pressing down on the land. I pulled my truck onto the shoulder and stepped out. The air was wrong. Too still. No wind. No birds. No insects. Even my radio crackled once and then went silent again. I checked the coordinates the elders had given me. According to every GPS system I had, I was standing in the middle of nowhere. No marked roads. No structures. No history. But directly in front of me was a dirt road that absolutely should not have been there. It wasn't overgrown. It wasn't washed out. It looked used. Fresh tire tracks pressed into the soil. I radioed dispatch again. Nothing. Against protocol, I went in. The dirt road sloped downward into a basin surrounded by low cliffs and juniper trees twisted into unnatural shapes, like they'd grown while trying to crawl away from something beneath the ground. About half a mile in, I saw the first structure. A building made of concrete and rusted metal. 1 story tall. No windows. Just a single steel door hanging slightly open. No markings. No signs. No cell towers nearby. But I recognized the architecture immediately. It was a temporary federal facility design, the kind used in the 1950s and 60s for short-term projects. Projects that were never supposed to last. My chest tightened. I parked and drew my flashlight. As I approached the door, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. Handprints. All over the concrete walls. Some adult-sized. Some small. Some smeared, as if whoever made them had been dragged. I pushed the door open. Inside, the air smelled like old metal and dust, but also something else. Something organic. The hallway stretched farther than the building should have allowed. Fluorescent lights flickered weakly overhead, some broken, some humming. On the walls were numbers painted in black. Room 1. Room 2. Room 3. Each number scratched repeatedly, like someone had tried to claw them off. I reached room 4. The door was gone. Inside were old chairs bolted to the floor. Leather straps still attached. A single drain in the center of the room. No equipment. No explanation. Just stains. Dark, layered stains. I backed away slowly. That's when I heard it. A voice. Low. Calm. Right behind me. "Officer, you're not supposed to remember us. I spun around. No one there. But the lights flickered violently now, buzzing so loudly it made my teeth vibrate. I moved faster. Room 7. Room 9. Room 12. The numbering skipped randomly, like something had rearranged the building from the inside. In room 14, I found a chalkboard. Written in uneven handwriting were dozens of names. Some were crossed out. Some circled. Some written over again and again. At the bottom, one name was written larger than the rest. My last name. I felt cold spread through my spine. I didn't hear footsteps. I didn't hear breathing. But I knew something was standing behind me. Not moving. Waiting. I spoke without turning around. Who's here? The answer came from everywhere at once. From the walls. From the ceiling. From inside my head. We stayed quiet because that was the deal. I forced myself to turn. The hallway was no longer empty. Figures stood in the shadows, human-shaped, but wrong. Their joints bent slightly off. Their faces looked unfinished, like someone stopped halfway through making them. Some wore old uniforms. Some wore civilian clothes from different decades. None of them blinked. One stepped forward. Its mouth didn't move when it spoke. You wear the badge now. That means you guard the lie. I backed up until my shoulders hit the wall. I don't know what this place is. The figure tilted its head. That's what they promised you. The lights went out. Complete darkness. Something brushed past my arm. Then another. Then dozens. Cold fingers. Not grabbing. Just checking. Counting. When the lights came back on, I was alone again. Except for one thing. A door at the end of the hallway that hadn't been there before. It was marked. Exit. I didn't hesitate. I ran. The door slammed shut behind me as I burst back into daylight. The basin was empty. No building. No road. No tire tracks. Just flat desert stretching in every direction. My truck was still there. My radio worked again. Dispatch answered like nothing had happened. When I returned to headquarters, I filed a sealed report. It was rejected. No explanation. That night, I checked the missing persons files again. Every name on that chalkboard. Officially listed as voluntary relocation. No remains found. No investigations. No closures. A week later, I received a package in my locker. No return address. Inside was an old photograph. Black and white. It showed that facility, brand new. And standing in front of it were uniformed officers. One of them looked exactly like me. Same face. Same eyes. Same badge number. The date on the back read 1962. That's when I understood the truth. Some places don't disappear. They wait. And some jobs don't end. They just change uniforms. Every reservation has places we don't patrol after certain hours. Not officially. But everyone knows. There are calls we mark as unfounded. There are reports we shorten. There are recordings we never submit. Because some things don't break laws. They break understanding. If you live near tribal land. If you drive empty roads at night. If you hear footsteps where no one should be. Don't investigate. Don't follow. And if a voice on the radio tells you not to come closer. Listen. Because some calls aren't meant to be answered.